The morning my brother showed up at my door with a casserole dish and a smile, I should have known something was wrong. Gerald never cooked. In 63 years of being my brother, the man had never once set foot in a kitchen with any intention beyond opening the refrigerator. But there he was, standing on my front step in Oakville, Ontario, holding a foil-covered dish and wearing the kind of expression people put on at funerals, that carefully arranged sadness that doesn't quite reach the eyes. "Thought you could use a home-cooked meal," he said, with everything going on. I stepped aside and let him in. The house felt different with him in it, smaller, somehow. "My name is Raymond Kowalski. I turned 64 last March, the same month my daughter Claire was diagnosed with stage 2 ovarian cancer. I had lived in the same house on Maple Grove Drive for 31 years. I had raised 2 children in it, buried a wife in it emotionally, if not literally, and rebuilt myself inside its walls after Margaret passed from a stroke 8 years ago. The house was mine, the memories were mine, and the $920,000 I had sitting in a joint investment account, the proceeds from selling our old cottage property in Muskoka, money I had been saving specifically for Claire's treatment that was supposed to be mine too. I just didn't know yet that Gerald had other plans for it. Claire was 34 when the diagnosis came. She lived in Mississauga with her husband, a quiet man named Patrick, who worked in logistics and loved her more than I had ever seen a man love anyone. They had been trying for a second child. The cancer ended that conversation before it started. The oncologist, a careful woman who chose every word like she was diffusing something, told us that Claire's best option was an aggressive treatment plan, followed by surgery. The kind of treatment that costs money even with provincial coverage. The kind that means private clinics and specialist consultations and medications not covered by OHIP. I told Claire not to worry about the cost. I meant it. There was nothing on this earth I would not sell. Nothing I would not give, to keep my daughter alive. I called Gerald 2 days after the diagnosis, because he was the only family I had left outside of my children. Our parents were gone. Our sister Diane had moved to Nova Scotia years ago, and we had fallen out of touch. Gerald lived 20 minutes from me in Burlington, and we had always been close, or I had always believed we were close, which I now understand is not the same thing at all. He listened to everything I told him. He asked the right questions. He said the right words. He held my shoulder when he came over that first weekend and told me that family took care of family. I believed him. That was my first mistake. The second mistake came 6 weeks later, when Gerald offered to help me manage the Muskoka account while I focused on Claire's appointments. I was driving her to the cancer center 3 times a week. I was coordinating with Patrick, with her doctors, with the insurance company. I was sleeping 4 hours a night and forgetting to eat. Gerald said he could handle the administrative burden. He said he had a contact at a financial services firm who could help restructure things for tax efficiency. I said yes. I signed a limited power of attorney that his contact, a man named Bryce, who had a firm handshake and a cheap suit placed in front of me in my own kitchen on a Tuesday afternoon. I told myself I was being practical. I told myself I was simplifying things. I told myself Gerald was my brother. What I did not tell myself, because I did not yet know it, was that the document Bryce had placed in front of me was not the document it appeared to be. I would not learn that until much later. By then, the damage had already begun. Claire's first major surgery was scheduled for the 12th of November. By the 1st of October, I had noticed something odd. I had always received paper statements from the investment account. Margaret had insisted on paper statements, said she never trusted anything she couldn't hold in her hand, and I had kept the habit long after she was gone. The October statement didn't arrive. I called the financial institution. The woman on the phone was polite and slightly confused. She told me the statement delivery preference on the account had been changed to electronic, and that the registered email address was one I didn't recognize. I asked her to read it back to me. It was Gerald's email address. I thanked her and ended the call. I sat in my kitchen for a very long time. Outside, the maple in the front yard was dropping its leaves the way it did every October, slow and unhurried, like it had all the time in the world. I watched one fall and I thought about the day I planted that tree, 28 years ago, when Claire was 6 and she had insisted on helping dig the hole. Then I picked up the phone and I called Donna Szymanski. Donna had been Margaret's best friend before she became mine. She was 71, recently retired from 30 years practicing family and estate law in Hamilton, and she was the kind of woman who had seen enough of human nature to be unsurprised by almost anything. When I told her what I had found, she was quiet for a moment. "Raymond," she said, "don't touch anything. Don't call Gerald. Don't log into the account. Come see me tomorrow morning and bring every piece of paper you have." I did exactly that. What Donna found, over the next 4 days of careful and methodical review, was a picture that assembled itself slowly. The way a photograph develops in a darkroom, shapes emerging from nothing, growing sharper and more terrible the longer you looked. The limited power of attorney I had signed was not limited. The document Bryce had substituted, and Donna was very careful with her language, said substituted with a precision that told me she had seen this before, gave Gerald broad authority over the account, not to restructure for tax purposes, not to manage administrative paperwork, authority to make withdrawals, to authorize transfers, to act on my behalf in all financial matters related to that account. In the 6 weeks since I had signed, $340,000 had left the account in 4 separate transfers. I remember the moment Donna told me that number. I remember the particular quality of the silence in her office, the hum of the building's heating system, the distant sound of traffic on Main Street, the feeling of the chair under me becoming the only solid thing in the room. "Where did it go?" I asked, though part of me already understood that wherever it had not gone anywhere good. 3 transfers to a numbered company registered in Alberta, Donna said. 1 transfer to a personal account. We'll need to dig further to find the beneficial owners of the company. But Raymond, she stopped, set down her pen. "I think you already know." I did know. I had known since the moment I heard Gerald's email address read back to me by a stranger on the phone. I had just been hoping I was wrong. I was not wrong. I want to be honest about what those next few days felt like, because I think it matters. People talk about betrayal like it is a single event, a door slamming shut. It isn't. It is more like standing in a room while the walls slowly come in, each new piece of information taking another few inches of air. Gerald and I had grown up sharing a bedroom in a small house in Brantford. I had been at his wedding. I had been at his wife Sandra's bedside when she miscarried their second child 20 years ago. I had lent him money 3 times without ever once asking for it back, because I thought that was what brothers did. All of that was still true. And it existed alongside the fact that he had looked me in the face while my daughter was fighting cancer and stolen $340,000 from the money I had saved to keep her alive. Both things were real. That was the part that no one tells you, that people can be simultaneously real to you and capable of something you cannot comprehend. Donna advised me to say nothing to Gerald. She began the process of contacting the financial institution, the Law Society, and a colleague of hers who specialized in fraud recovery. She also referred me to a detective with Halton Regional Police, a woman named Investigator Beaumont, who asked very careful questions and wrote everything down in a notebook with a green cover. Gerald called me twice that week. The first time, I let it go to voicemail. He left a cheerful message asking how Claire was doing and mentioning he had found a new restaurant in Burlington we should try. The second time, I answered. I kept my voice exactly as it had always been. I asked about his knee. He'd been having trouble with it since summer, and I told him Claire's surgery was still on track for November. I asked if he wanted to come for dinner on Sunday. He said yes. He sounded genuinely pleased. I hung up and sat in the kitchen for a long time, watching the maple tree. What Gerald did not know, what I had not told him, because Donna had advised me to say nothing, was that 3 weeks before I signed his document, I had already made a different arrangement. When Claire's diagnosis first came, and I understood what the financial reality would look like, I had called Donna for a different reason. I had wanted to make sure the Muskoka money would reach Claire directly. If anything happened to me during all of this, the stress, the sleeplessness, the way I had been pushing myself. I was 64, and I had high blood pressure, and I was not entirely sure my body was going to cooperate with everything I was asking of it. Donna had helped me set up a designated beneficiary structure on the account and, more importantly, had helped me transfer the majority of the Muskoka assets, $680,000 of the $920,000, into a separate trust account in Claire's name 2 weeks before Gerald's man Bryce ever came to my kitchen table. Gerald had been stealing from an account that no longer held most of what he thought it held. The $340,000 he had moved was real. That money was gone and would need to be recovered through legal channels, which Investigator Beaumont and Donna's fraud colleague were already working toward. But the $680,000, Claire's money, the surgery money, The money that mattered most, he had never touched it. He didn't know it existed. I have thought about this many times since. About the particular mercy of not having told him. About how the information I kept to myself, simply by staying quiet, had protected my daughter without my even knowing that was what I was doing. Sunday dinner arrived. Gerald came at 6. He brought wine, a Niagara Riesling, because he knew I liked it, and he sat at my kitchen table and ate roast chicken and talked about a documentary he'd been watching and asked about Claire's appetite and whether her hair had started falling out yet from the treatment. I watched him across the table. I kept my face the way I had been keeping it all week, steady, familiar, the face of a brother who had nothing on his mind beyond getting through the day. After dinner, while we were having coffee, my phone rang. It was Investigator Beaumont. I excused myself and stepped into the hallway. "Mr. Kowalski," she said, "I want to let you know that we have what we need. The numbered company in Alberta has been traced. Your brother is listed as a director, along with a man named Bryce Halford. We'll be moving forward this week." I thanked her. I ended the call. I stood in the hallway for a moment with my hand on the wall, feeling the plaster under my palm, the same plaster I had repainted 3 times over 31 years, the same wall Claire had marked with a pencil every birthday to track how tall she was growing. Then I went back to the kitchen and poured myself more coffee. Gerald looked up. "Everything okay?" "Fine," I said. "Just Claire's care coordinator." He nodded and wrapped both hands around his mug, and I watched him, and I thought, "You have been sitting at this table your entire life, believing you know exactly who I am. You have never once considered that you might be wrong." Gerald was arrested on a Wednesday morning in early November, 9 days before Claire's surgery. Investigators attended his home in Burlington at 7 a.m. 2000. Sandra called me from the driveway, crying, asking me what was happening. I told her to call a lawyer. I told her I was sorry. I meant both of those things. The fraud charges were laid under the criminal code. The civil recovery process, which Donna's colleague was managing, had already located 2 of the 4 transfers and begun the freezing process through the courts. Bryce Halford was arrested separately the same morning. Claire's surgery happened as scheduled on the 12th of November. Patrick sat with me in the waiting room for 6 hours. We didn't talk much. He brought terrible coffee from the machine down the hall, and we drank it in paper cups and watched the clock, and I thought about Margaret, about how she would have been pacing the entire time, would have introduced herself to every nurse who walked by, would have filled the silence with enough words for both of us. The surgeon came out at 4:15 in the afternoon. She said it had gone well. She said they had clean margins. She said Claire was in recovery and would be asking for water within the hour. I put my face in my hands and I stayed that way for a while. Patrick put his hand on my back and didn't say anything, which was exactly right. Claire came home 3 weeks later. She had lost weight and her voice was different, quieter, more careful, like she was choosing which words were worth the energy. But she sat in the kitchen of her house in Mississauga, and she drank tea, and she looked out at the backyard, where her daughter, my granddaughter Lily, was drawing on the patio stones with sidewalk chalk, and there was something in her face that I can only describe as stubborn, a refusal, a decision made somewhere deep that the story was not finished yet. It is not finished yet. As of this past February, Claire has completed her follow-up treatment, and her last scan was clear. She still tires easily. She still has hard days. But she is here. She is sitting in her kitchen drinking tea and watching her daughter draw flowers on the patio stones. And I have driven over twice a week since November, and I intend to keep driving over for as long as my knees, and the 401 will allow it. Gerald's case is moving through the courts. The civil recovery has returned $280,000 of the $340,000 he transferred, and Donna tells me the remainder is likely recoverable once certain assets are liquidated. He has not spoken to me since his arrest. Sandra sends occasional short messages through a mutual acquaintance, not apologies exactly, more like acknowledgments that something happened. I don't know what will become of their marriage. I don't know what will become of him. I have stopped trying to understand it the way I tried to understand it in those first weeks, pulling at the question of why the way you pull at a knot that only tightens. Some things don't have answers that help. I still have the maple tree. It leafed out again in April, which it has done every April without being asked, without fanfare, because that is simply what it does. I sat on the front steps last Sunday with a cup of coffee and watched it for a while. Lily was with me. Claire had brought her over for the afternoon, and she asked me why I was looking at the tree like that. I told her I had planted it a long time ago, when her mother was about her age. She considered this with the seriousness that 6-year-olds bring to information they find genuinely interesting. Then she asked if we could plant another one. I told her we could plant as many as she wanted. There are things I know now that I did not know. The morning Gerald stood on my doorstep with a casserole dish and that careful, constructed expression. I know that love and intent are not the same thing. That someone can occupy every role in your life: brother, confidant, the man who helped you move furniture 3 separate times, and still be capable of choosing themselves at the moment it costs the most. I know that silence is sometimes the most protective thing you have. That there is wisdom in keeping the most important information close, in not showing all of what you know, in trusting the structures you have put in place rather than the faces of the people standing in front of you. I know that the most dangerous moment in any crisis is the one right before you know it's a crisis, when everything still looks familiar, and you are still extending the ordinary courtesies of trust, still making coffee for the person who has already decided to take something from you. And I know this, which I have been turning over in my mind for months now. The money I protected was not protected through any act of cleverness or suspicion. It was protected because I had been trying to take care of my daughter. Because that instinct to make sure Claire would be safe, to get the paperwork right, to call Donna and do the thing properly, had been in place before the threat arrived. I had been doing the right thing before I knew the right thing was necessary. That is the only real protection any of us ever have. Not the ability to see betrayal coming. Not the ability to outmaneuver people who have decided to deceive us. But the slow, unglamorous, consistent work of caring for the people we love, the phone calls made, the documents signed, the small decisions that feel administrative in the moment and become everything later. Take care of your people. Do the paperwork. Plant the tree. The rest, when it comes, and sometimes it comes, you will face one day at a time, with whatever is already in place to hold you. That is all any of us can do. That is enough.